My computer's old. There we go. Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to On Writing and Resistance, Tips and Tricks by Box of Hate Brains, which so happens to be me. So who is this person? Who am I? I've been writing for the last 21 years. I've been trained in the AWA method, which is the Amherst Writers and Artists method, which is basically incorporating how everyone is a writer. Everyone has the ability to write. It's very engaging, it's very supportive, it's a great system. I highly encourage it, especially for people who are just starting to write. It's going to help you create your own voice and also maintain your voice and structure. And so I had been part of it for about 6 years, I think so. I've been writing Gun and Wing since 2011. On AO3, I have lots of words. And also I was a speaker in the 2022 summer series. I talked about Catra and gender and also had a writing workshop. But out of everything, and best of all, I'm not an expert. I've just been in a lot of workshops, I've been in a lot of webinars, and I've been part of writing guilds. So this is just some of the info that I found helpful. It's not the end all be all. This is just some things that I wanted to share with people today, especially if you're interested in writing. So we're going to talk about resistance. Well, what is resistance? First, it's a very interesting word. It's a word of struggle, but also a word of strength. The first definition is the refusal to accept or comply with something, and the attempt to prevent something from action or argument. Now, the second definition is the ability not to be affected by something, especially adversely. We are going to be having focus on the first definition, but I want you to keep the second definition in mind because there is a duality of having resistance and being resistant towards something. So, like I said, in this webinar, we're going to talk about resistance as the first definition. So, nope. I can't see her name right now, but she is, why can't I move this bar? Sure I could. Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. So Carrie Ann Rockmore, she's a PhD. She's one of the founders of the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. Actually, they do a lot when it comes to writing, and a lot of what I've taken today is from some of their webinars and some of their series. So resistance is basically, let's do this. You tell yourself, let's effing write. And an hour later, nothing. It's a blank Word doc, you know. So what happened? You did everything in your power to set yourself up for some good writing time and nothing. So the culprit is your resistance. So some of the resistance we're going to talk about today is procrastination, avoidance, denial, and the inner critic. And we're going to also talk about some strategies that we can do to continue on. We're going to investigate, we're going to diagnose, we're going to curate, and we're going to tame it. Now, when you write, I want you to try to focus on not productivity. It's not really about the words that you write. It's about being able to write them, to sit down and to make that progress, however it is, whether it's 100 words, whether it's 1,000 words. If you're not writing, that's 0 words. Any words that you take is going to be a progress. Even if you have to cut them later, it's going to give you that flow to continue on. So let's first talk about procrastination. It's a self-defeating behavior. It's marked by short-term benefits, so you get to sit down, relax, have fun, watch your cat videos, but with long-term costs, i.e. not writing, not progressing yourself, not learning. It's very much, I'll do it later, I'll do it tomorrow, it can wait. Everybody has done this, everybody has felt this. But I also want you to not to use it as a thing to beat yourself up with. Procrastination and laziness are two different concepts. Procrastination is just delaying it. Laziness is just not doing it at all. Just saying you're going to do it, never doing it. So procrastination can be the cause of a larger issue. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, but it could be a lot of things going on. It could be mental illness, mental health, or just there's something going on in your life, etc. So we're also going to talk about avoidance. Avoidance refers to the behaviors of where people either don't enter a situation at all, or they leave the situation where they've entered. So let's say you've just found a new writing group and you say 2 hours beforehand, you know what, I'm not going. I'm just not going to go. Don't feel it, not going to do it. Or you leave the situation, you're there, you sit down, you look at a blank piece of paper, you start thinking, what are all these people going to think of when I write? How is this going to affect me? What if they think it's crap, et cetera, et cetera? You leave. You just say, oh, sorry, I gotta go. Avoidance can be active, passive, or proactive. Active is basically escaping or saying, no, I'm not going to do this, never mind. Whereas passive, it could be something like you do sit down to write, you're ready to write, but then you have these feelings of just like, why am I doing this? Maybe I shouldn't do this. There are so many other better things I could be doing. And associating writing with some of those negative emotions or experiences. And then proactive is a little bit better because you're thinking about it, you're going to do it, you're concentrating on it, but then you sit down at the end of the day and you're just like, I'm exhausted, I can't do it because you've been overthinking it. All of these can factor into not being able to write. And of course, this can also be the cause of a larger issue. And then finally, we have denial and the inner critic. Well, denial is rejection or dismissal of a reality, avoiding facts that don't match what we're feeling or how we're feeling it. Things like, I'm just not a good writer. No one will care if I write. No one likes the couple I ship anyway. I'm just a small little garbage person, and I'm never going to get the recognition that I want. So it's minimizing the truth because these can be not facts. And it magnifies this distorted perception of ourselves, of our writing, of the stories we want to create. And that hampers us from moving on and starting or finishing a piece. And this can also be a cause of a larger issue. So let's say it is a cause of a larger issue. Your mental health is low, you're really stressed at work, something like that. If you're just sitting there and you absolutely cannot write and it keeps happening, I would highly suggest making a change. And that could be self-care, going for a walk, taking a bath, doing some breathing exercises, snuggling a little kitty cat, etc. Focus on yourself first before you can focus on that, because you will see that it will start to help you get energy, get the motivation, get the creativity going. I also highly suggest listening to podcasts, reading books. Up on the screen are some of the ones that I like to listen to that are podcasts. That makes it me a little bit more motivated, a little bit more energy and vigor to create and to believe in myself and to keep going. And I know I'm gonna say like the dreaded like horrible E word, which is exercise. And I know I understand completely. I was taking this health class before, and the professor said, "What if I told you I have the miracle drug for you? It reduces depression, reduces anxiety, it increases your appetite, your energy, your positivity, all these things, and it reduces cardiovascular problems, cancer, things like that. What if I told you there is an easy way to do this and it just takes 30 minutes? And that is exercise. Um, Doing 30 minutes or more of exercise a day for 3 to 5 days a week, it significantly improves. And there's studies after studies after studies that show this. Say you can't even do 30 minutes, that's okay. Doing little steps is progress because, again, we're focusing on progress, not productivity. And I highly suggest this all the time too. If you're just going through a rough patch, for a few years, we've all been there. Going and seeking out a therapist or a support group that can help support you, because you are the focus first, because after that, everything else will come a lot more naturally. So here are some of the strategies, and I want to kind of put a pin in this a little bit because there might be strategies where you're like, this doesn't work for me, this doesn't, that sounds, no, I'm not going to do that. And I understand. Not everything is going to work, but it's a good idea to try it. And even the strategies that you might have used previously in your life, and you're like, no, that didn't really work for me. You're at a different place now, and maybe some of those resources might some of these might not work today. Maybe a year from now, something like this will work out great. You just got to keep trying and keep adjusting because you, but also things can change as we age, as we learn more, as we, grow more into who we're becoming. So first, we're going to talk about the investigator. Now, there's this great little phrase in DBT therapy that's, if you can name it, you can tame it. So meaning, if you can name whatever is bothering you, then you know where you're going to be starting from. You know what is the issue and the core issue. So with investigator, I want you to be a sleuth. I want you to put the little sleuth hat on, get your little magnifying glass, everything, and investigate your resistance. If your resistance manifests as a behavior, like the urge to do something else, or you have this feeling of dread when you go to sit at your desk, record it. Record everything. If your resistance emerges as this negative talk, this inner critic, write down what it's saying. Track it, track its patterns and behaviors. When does it happen? What time of day? Where? Sometimes where we're at, like if our desk is cluttered, or if we're feeling just really housebound, that can be part of it too. So track and see where these things are going, because it's going to help you, especially in the next part. So start stalking your own resistance, because now we're going to diagnose it. So once you've tracked your resistance, you can use that to create a resistance diagnostic. And this is like, we're being, scientists now. We're going to be studying it, and then we're going to be diagnosing it. So it's going to help us to figure out what we're feeling. We can remember a strategy that gets us back on track, a technique that's going to move us forward. And you're going to use this now, you could use this later. It's basically a personal thing for you. So sometimes having that solution right at your fingertips can remind you of these things like A, you've done this before, you've faced this type of thing before. B, you've successfully navigated around it. You know what to do. And C, or 3, whatever, you have the tools in your toolbox and at your discretion of what to do. So this is just a sample, and I know it's kind of small, but and I'm going to also give, I think, this thing. But anyway, so this is like a sample of it. Say your resistance is perfectionism. You want everything to be perfect the first time, first draft, everything. You go to write and you're like, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. I can't write because I just need it to be right. There's workarounds. Let's say you lower your standards. Let's say you be specific about what criteria you need done with this. You know, today I'm going to write 500 words. I don't care if they're good. I don't care if they're bad. I'm just going to write 500 words. And remind yourself that perfect doesn't happen in a day. In fact, perfect never happens. No one's perfect, but we can get better. We can progress. You're going to see in this chart, especially this is what I got from the National Diversity, a lot of them say to write 15 minutes every day. And I know that that's a hard thing to do for a lot of people, but there's proof in the pudding that honestly, when you sit down to just write a little bit, a lot of times you'll start writing more. There's this great technique called clearing the throat. It's basically you just write. You're writing to clear the throat. You're not writing anything good. You know you're not. But what's going to come after that is going to be a lot better because you're getting out all of this gunk out of it. You're clearing it out. So that 15 minutes of writing could be just you clearing that out, writing whatever comes up in your mind, writing something crappy if you need to. I've done that before. Taking an exercise, just running with it for a little bit. And then that actually will help you focus more with the work that needs to be done, that you want to be done. So again, this is not going to be your resistance diagnostic, because you're going to be working on what works for you. So now we're going to curate. This is a reframing technique. So you're going to imagine your story or your project as a museum. You're going to collect your artifacts, so your themes, your feelings, your ideas, all of that into one place. So say for like crossing rivers, you know, there's a lot of themes of the past, of loneliness, the bird flapping for Wu Fei's space heart, Catra's molten lava space heart, all these things that I can collect and put together and put into my museum of what I'm going to be telling, because I'm creating and curating a story. And also I encourage you to have different mediums for this as well. Mood boards, collages, playlists. I have an extensive playlist where I take emotions from that I want to use for certain scenes. But it could be anything. It could be research. There's a few times where I've used research of space to help boost my story and boost what my characters are feeling or experiencing. And you're going to take that and you're going to put it all into a centralized place. And that could be physical, that could be non-physical, but somewhere where you can go and look into your museum and see everything, look at the little tags, you know, pretend you're creating little tags. This is a picture. What does the picture say? Well, the picture is this. I really enjoy Notion. It's a free app. You can put a lot of different things into it. Sheets I've used before, or Excel, and Canva, especially to create like mood boards and collages. And finally, we have the lion tamer. So this is where it gets to your inner critic. We're going to tame the critic. So some of the things that we can do to tame it is basically to track their dialogue. What are they saying? Are these things true? Are they consistent with the reality of my past? Because again, when we have a denial going on where we're like, oh, you know, I'm just a piece of crap. Nobody's going to read what I have to say. We'll start thinking about, is that true? No, it's not true. You know, are people going to read what I say? Probably. Um, maybe the amount of people that I want to, or maybe not. But there's probably going to be somebody who will read it. And I want you to just kind of track it in that and see what they're saying. Check in with them. That goes into the second one, which is personify them. Once you have that picture of your inner critic as a person, you can start engaging. You can have a relationship with them. It doesn't have to be a good relationship. You can say, hey, Sylvia, my inner critic, F you, get out. I don't need you here. You're good. You're good, girl. But it makes it more of a less dubious thing that gives you resistance and more solid. It's more of a tangible thing that you can deal with and you can control. Same with like an alternative. Okay, create a devil's advocate for your devil's advocate. And I know some of these might seem kind of silly, but you know what? Whatever it takes to fool your brain, or whatever it takes to fool that inner critic, sometimes we have to take these tips and these steps, and that's okay to do. That's fine. And again, you can invite them to the process. They can sit down. They might teach you something. They might say, oh boy, that sounds real weak, what so-and-so just said. And you can be like, you know what? You're absolutely right, and I can change that. And at the end of the day, reach out for support. Reach out to your friends. Reach out to people you write with and say, hey, you know, I'm feeling kind of awkward about this one chapter or whatever, and they might help beta for you, or they might give you suggestions, or you can say, look, I just need you to tell me that I'm a good writer, or I'm going to do something good, or you're excited for the next chapter, whatever it is. And that's okay to do too. And I'm going to tell you, writing is hard. Sometimes it sucks. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes being vulnerable. You might be listening to all this and being like, God, that's a lot of work. And it is. But you need to stop and celebrate what you're doing. There's effort that's being made. There's progress that's being made. Stop focusing on the negative. And I know that's a hard thing to do, but start to appreciate the positive things that you get back, those kudos that you get, the comments that you get. You know, honestly, I know somebody who used to print them out and just put them around to get, again, just show like, you know what? No, this person believed in me. This person really liked what I had to say. And honestly, anytime we try to make a change in our behavior, we're guaranteed to face resistance. You're going to try some of these and be like, oh God, this is a slog. I hate doing it. And it might be at first, but you might gain some really good insight from it. And always go back to your core. Remember what you love to write, why you love to write, you know, because at the end of the day, we're really writing for ourselves. As long as other people can and will come with us, that's great, but we're really writing for ourselves. And I think that's a good thing to think about. So again, these are not one size fit all. You have to be the one to develop your own internal system of values of what you want to be the quality of your work. Maybe you're like, you know what, I'm just going to do 100-word travels. I don't give a crap, but it's fun for me. Great, go ahead, do it. The definition of success is really what you make it. Because my definition of success is not going to be the same as yours, nor yours mine, and that's fine. So some useful techniques and apps that I'd like to just kind of talk about a little bit, and there are some links at the end that you can see. Mind mapping is a really good way to represent your ideas and concepts. It's actually physically writing it out. And that's also a good thing to do sometimes. Sometimes that can break up kind of the noise that's in our head. If we start actually physically writing, you can make art with it. You can put it with a collage. But it kind of just helps us make the story a little bit less scary and again, a little bit less dubious in this cosmos, more tangible that we can look at, we can pin up and say, yep, this is where I'm going. These are the feelings I want to feel. This is the place I want to go. Write or Die can be good or it can be horribly stressful. I got a lot of anxiety with it, but I also wrote a few chapters with it as well. So, if that's something that you'd like to do, basically you have to keep writing, or it's going to start giving you alarms. It can be very stressful, but it can also be very exciting as well. So you just kind of have to know yourself. I highly suggest getting into a writing group or at least an accountability group. You can start your own server. You can basically talk about your goals, what you want to accomplish, when you're going to accomplish them, and have people that are kind of make you accountable for that. Some people this will work with, some people this will not work with, and that's okay too. Reach out to, especially if there's a writer that you really enjoy and they wouldn't mind. And of course, always be respectful towards other writers. But ask them if they can give you some of their tips and tricks. You know, if you're stuck on this one thing, what do they do if they're stuck on that? Or you can ask around for somebody to be your beta, and that also gives you that extra layer of feedback and to bounce ideas off of. BrainSparker is a great app that gives you just basically kind of flashcards of certain things you could write. And I found that kind of helpful. And honestly, too, I want to put in the word for basically Discord's writer bot. We have it in rare pairs. It's under writing sprints. In the end, I also have a link that you can go to get all of its commands, but you can basically put in projects by name. It will keep track of the words that you have towards your project. You can do monthly goals. You can check your monthly goals. It gives you experience and gives you certain levels for making it. And but it's a useful tool if you want to keep track of that. And also you can do writing sprints with it. And those can be a lot of fun as well. So at the end of the day, though, pay yourself first, you know, give yourself grace. Writing is hard. It's not easy. If it were easy, that would be all that we did. You have to do what works for you. But I would also suggest that you try different methods and different techniques, even if you're like, I don't like that. Try it anyway, just to see. And if maybe you get something out of it, maybe try it again. Writing is not like an easy thing to do. It's like riding a bicycle. You're gonna fall a few times, and that's okay because again, we're focusing on progress and not productivity. You're gonna get better at it the more you do it. You just will. And writing doesn't need to be a long endeavor. Writing can be, I have so many napkins of ideas, of scenes, of poetry, tons of napkins that I have to then type out. But it gets you writing. It gets you in the mood of creation and it gets you in the mood to create. And that's what we're going for. And while writing is solitary, you're not alone. We all have these problems. We all have these issues. So I encourage you to look for people who will uplift you and to challenge you. It's kind of also like tennis. You know, you're going to have, if somebody's engaging you and doing a back and forth, you're going to get better at it. And negativity or rejection isn't a reflection on you. Criticism isn't a reflection of you. It could be part of the writing. And honestly, you get to decide whether you are going to listen or not. Sometimes you can say, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. I should change this. Or you might just say, okay, yeah, cool, thanks. And that's fine too. You get to make these decisions because it's your method of success. It's your definition of basically where you want to go as a writer. So these are some of the citations and websites that you can go to. Here's one for mind mapping, and again, I'm going to put this in the eventually in the server. But if you have any questions, now would be the time.
I'll jump in with one.
Okay,
Um,
I was like, did I just say this whole thing and like nobody was around?
no, we've all just been listening diligently. I did go to the bathroom and clean my teeth, but that's besides the
Oh,
sides.
okay, okay,
Um,
cool, cool, cool.
I have wireless earphones. You came with me. You didn't know, but it was
I
a lovely
didn't.
experience.
I had a
Um,
feeling though.
I'm just thinking of um so there's this sitcom called Red Dwarf, and in it one of the characters he's failed his exams like multiple times, and he sits down to do them again. And he spends so long trying to come up with the perfect timetable to revise everything he needs to know for this exam that he runs out of time to revise for the exam. So my question is kind of like, how do you avoid all of this investigation and consideration and self-care and printing beautiful like comments all over, like mood boarding everything? How do you avoid all of this becoming your new form of procrastination? How do you stop this becoming your Arnold J. Rimmer schedule for revision?
That's a great question. Because again, at the end of the day, if you're not doing it, if you keep avoiding it, that's gonna still be procrastination. Yes. Um, what I would suggest is, of course, doing the things you need to do. Check in with yourself first. How am I feeling? What's my level of anxiety? What's this? You know, if you sit down, can't write anything, take a short walk, come back, sit down again. You know, that, and honestly too, um, another thing in like DBT is reward yourself. Reward yourself for sitting down. Make yourself a nice cup of tea. Make your, you know, get yourself some cookies. Writing is a good place to be. Tell your brain that, you know. But I would highly suggest sometimes you
Bribe
have to,
bribe the brain.
yes, you have to bribe yourself. Yes, absolutely. Because again, all of these things that are coming at us, all these paths of resistance are from our brain. It's from our own selves. We are the ones who are stopping ourselves. So sometimes we have to trick ourselves, sometimes we have to bribe ourselves. Um, and that's absolutely okay to do. But I would at the end of
Yeah.
the day still sit down for an allotted part of time and write, even if it's crap. Just write because that is going to do something. It will.
Mm. I think my next question then, and again, still playing slightly devil's advocate, is
Yeah, sure.
we've been talking a lot about how this should be progress, not productivity. How does that
Mhm.
sit with saying things like, you should sit down and like set a goal to make 500 words, or, does that not just feel like you're trying to set productivity targets?
Um, that's true. It can be, I see the balance of that. I think with that is that it's not so much, we're not going to actually really super focus on that 500 words because I bet you might go a little bit beyond and maybe you go a little bit not beyond. Let's say you write 300. That is what you take and that's what you congratulate yourself for and that's what you focus on. Again, leave negativity out the door. You can say I'm going to write 500 words and you write 150. That's 150 more words than the 0 words that you would have written. So
Mm.
any progress, but we want to give ourselves goals too. If you don't have a goal, you're going to be aimless. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I don't know. I think that's one for me because like I often get into this like, oh, I need to write this much or I need to write this much. And I find like actually setting word targets doesn't help me so much as like I want to get it to this point. So I want it to get it to the where the character says X, or I want to move them from this location to that location. And then it becomes less about like these kind of word targets or finish a chapter targets. It's just like, what's the next bit I want to write? What's the next bit I want to write? Full stop,
Mhm.
and then do that.
Well, and that's, I mean, that's the same too. You can say
Mm,
that instead of the word target. Um, or honestly, a time target. I usually give myself time targets. I don't focus on the words. I focus on the, okay,
mm,
I'm gonna sit down for 30 minutes and write. And maybe half of it I might get rid of. I might cut all of it, but you know what? This is the time target that I'm gonna focus on. And you just have to make that goal for yourself, whatever that goal is, because again, you measure your own success. So, and even if you fall short, I really want everybody to focus on celebrating what you did do. Because at the end of the day, one word is better than zero words. It could be the.
yeah, Danny dropped something interesting in a chat.
Oh,
Um,
sorry, I'm not looking at the
that
chat.
that's okay. I've got it popped open on the side because I got out of full screen. So I don't know if Danny wants to say
Oh,
it or
okay. Let's see. Let's
she's
see.
out in the windy garden. So it says, I think Danny, correct me if you're wrong, you're talking about word counts are a challenge with a tangible outcome. So you can choose the target because other outcomes are intangible. So have a better style as a goal, but it's not structured in a way that's attainable short term, where word count is. Yeah, that's a really good
Hmm.
point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is frustrating. Um, and honestly too, we have to give ourselves grace because we might be in the middle of something and be like, you know what, this isn't working for me. It's okay to switch it up. It's absolutely fine.
Mm,
There's no reason why not to. I think a lot of times, I don't know if it's for other people, but for myself, I get in this thing of like, well, this is the goal that I set. This is what I have to do. Um, like, and I get that brain like locked into target. Basically zero target. And I'm like, okay, I got to do these things. Um, but if I'm having a bad experience, if I'm not having, fun, because writing should be fun. It's difficult, yes, but it's also fun. Um, and then I have to switch around strategies. I have to say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go do a couple dishes, and that might clear my mind. Or you know what? Maybe this target, or honestly, here's my biggest one. Actually, two. Okay, here are my biggest two. It's the wrong song for the chapter that I want to make, and I have to go find the right song, which, but once I find the right song, it clicks. Or I'm writing the wrong thing. I'll be writing and I'm like, this is a slog. Why is this so heavy? I can't even, this is the wrong story that I'm writing. I have to find different characters, or I have to find a different thing, or I have to find a different perspective. Um, like I had really hard trouble when I was writing Crossing Rivers, and it was right after, spoiler alert, Catra got shot, and I was sitting on that chapter for like a good 3 months. Um, and so I had to basically rethink it. So I went back, and here's a good thing too, is I've reread the whole thing over again twice to get to where I needed to go from there because it was just a slog. I just could not think of it. And so I did change a few things, and I sat down and I refocused on what I wanted to express that the characters were going to feel next. And eventually I was able to get through it, thankfully. And here we are. So, any other questions from Danny? I don't see anybody else in the chat. Oh, there's one new
uh,
message. L, no. Okay.
nice.
And again, we're a community. We are a community of people. Um, Always put that in your back pocket. I understand people don't want to they feel weird reaching out, or they feel weird to, like, oh, I don't want to, bother anybody. It's okay sometimes to reach out. I'm not saying like reach out every time, every day, but it's okay sometimes when you're stuck with something, bounce ideas. And even if they're not what you're going for, then you still have a direction. Like if somebody's giving you all these ideas and you're like, no, no, at least you know where you're not going. So
I'll write anything, but not that.
I know there's been a couple times with you where
I've
I'm like,
got
how about this? And how about that? And you're like, no, no. And I'm like, okay, okay, well, I mean, now
absolutely
you,
not. No, no. But
but
now
it
I
gives
do
you
know
a
what I
direction.
want to write. So in some respects,
Exactly.
your garbage help has been very helpful in a backhanded
Exactly.
kind of way. Um,
Absolutely.
I mean, I've kind of shared one of my tips, which is putting aside word counts because I find them very
Hmm.
productivity based for me. And your manager may vary. I fully understand that. Um,
Hmm.
and so I tend to focus on other things. And I think with those intangible big goals, like that's probably where your investigation stage comes in to like break them down into, okay, so I want a better style. What is it that I don't like about my style? Or what is it that I'm really struggling with in terms of style? So is it
Hmm.
describing a scene? Is it speech? Is it getting different character voices to differentiate? And then kind of like picking on that
Hmm.
in detail the next time you write. So be like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and as my warm up, I'm gonna describe the room they're in as much detail as I possibly can. And then when you're writing your scene, you've kind of got that to one side where you can start threading that in and polishing it up a bit. Or perhaps if it's voices, then sitting down, one thing I like to do is make a list of kind of like, and like this is I do this in my head. I don't even write this down, but I have a kind of list of like what type of words and speech does this character use compared to this character. So like I kind of like braincast Catra in some of my stories as being more British in his English or more French in his English than
Hmm.
other characters. So Jewel will always use American. He'll say faucet, he'll say sidewalk, he'll say um, street. Katra might use the word boulevard because he's also got
Hmm.
the education to know the difference between a street and a boulevard. So he will pick his words more carefully, and then I use that to kind of get that voice differentiation when that's something I want to work on, say with a new set of characters I'm less familiar with.
Hmm.
Um, which is a very long-winded way of saying, what other tips and tricks do you guys have? Anybody else share what they do? Because I'm really curious to know different things. And we've all got different strengths, so I want to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nobody's tippy typing yet. But I agree with you too, because I know like a lot of this is also self-reflection. Um, but writing is a piece of ourselves that we're putting out there. It's always going to have those pieces of ourselves. So sometimes we have to kind of reflect on what we're doing and where we want to go and how we're doing it. Um, and sometimes like I know in the writing workshop we had a couple of like silly prompts, like really silly prompts. Because I remember Catra was a cat in mine. And I remember Experimental had a talking lion. And they're silly things to do, but it does also help you get sometimes your voice or sometimes what you where you want to go. There's a lot of roads to get there. Some easier than others. But I know for me too, having writing groups, having other people excited makes me excited. So, um, and this is not always great, but I will tell this as well, especially for original fiction and things like that. I spite write sometimes. Um, so if I read something and I'm like, this is terrible, and they got published, no, no, no. And it encourages me to write my own because I mean it's spite writing, yes. but it gives me a boost. It does give me sometimes that spark of energy from, oh, I'm just a bad writer, blah, 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 to like, well, that guy's a worse writer and he's published. Therefore, here I go.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I've been there, definitely. I've written two quite long um fanfics that were purely based on that concept is amazing, but your execution was terrible. I'm taking this off you. I'm taking it away, and I'm going to do it better
right,
because I'm doing it
exactly.
my way to cater to my interests and tastes, and therefore it's better automatically. Sarcasm. Don't genuinely think that, but yeah, that can be really motivating, actually.
It can. I see that Somalia said, yeah, sometimes writing English as a second language is hard. It's very difficult. English is not an easy language. There's a lot of nuances that um come up. Um, I think uh I think though also again reaching out to the community and saying, do you think this is better or maybe this? And even if they're like, oh, B is better, but you like A, you're like, you still have your answer. You still have your answer of, you know what, I'm gonna go with A, even though people said B. And I've done that before as well. But it makes me feel more solid in my decisions of what I'm writing or what I want to write.
This one's turned out quirky, but it's quirky on purpose. Live with it.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yes, he knows what he's doing. It's terrible. Like he knows what he's doing now.
Yeah, but
Uh,
honestly, so many props to people who write in a second language. Like, because I
yes,
speak a second language,
absolutely.
I can barely compose a letter in my second language. Never mind write non-fic like fiction. So
Exactly.
I'm forever blown away by people who can write fanfic bilingually or original fic. It's so good. Big props to you
Yes,
guys.
absolutely. 100% props to people writing in a second language, especially English, because it's a weird language. And like I said, fall back on your community, you know. If you're feeling nervous about it, we're all writers are a nervous bunch. We really are. We're just all vulnerable and some of us have egos bigger than others. Some of us don't. Some of it
Some of us have
depends
big
on the
egos,
day.
but we're friendly.
Yeah, some days my ego is huge and some days it's non-existent. I mean, that's just the thing that we all go through. But most
I
of the
would
time,
also
especially,
say,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead. Go
I'd
ahead.
also say if you do write in a second language, don't be too scared of having some of the voice of your first language come through because I read lots of books in translation and they're always so interesting with the way they, you know,
Yes,
arrange sentences because it's come from another language. It's a different way of phrasing
absolutely.
things. And that can really be actually your selling point. I love the way
Absolutely.
Japanese writers write dialogue because it's Japanese dialogue, but it's in English.
Hmm.
And they say things in a way that I wouldn't have immediately thought to phrase it in English, or I wouldn't have expected an English writer to phrase that in English, but it works so much better for the context.
Yes.
So I'd say don't be afraid of letting that kind of shine through a little bit.
Yes,
I always think it
absolutely.
adds so much flavor.
I see that a lot in poetry and you're right because it gives especially our brains work in patterns. And so when you're an English speaker and you're expecting a certain thing to go a certain way and it doesn't, it can be delightful. It can actually change the way you think about how something is said. So I agree with that 100%. So I don't see any more questions. So I think we are good to end this, but I want to thank everybody for coming today. If you have any of these, especially Brain Sparker, like I said, is really good. I like it. We have a Discord bot. I suggest using it. I like using her. She's sometimes finicky, but um, it's a lot of fun. And again, we're a community. So if you have questions, you need tips and tricks, let's talk to each other. Let's get it done, because especially in our small fandom, any work is good work. Any all ships are good ships. And that's how I've met a lot of great friends. So again, thank you for coming, and I'll see you. Well, let me see how to end this. I do things, I do. So